Latin America and Marcelo Gabriel, the International Development Director at LA4B, or Latin America for Business, of course. They're open. And Marcelo is a true professional. I've known Marcelo for the last 2 decades, worked with him in our corporate environments. And when it comes to the Latin American market, no one knows the aftermarket like Marcelo. So with no further ado, I welcome Marcelo Gabriel to talk about Latin American market.
Hey, this is Marcelo from Latin America for Business. Good to have you here. Today we'll talk a little bit about Latin America and the COVID-19 situation and the potential opportunities and risks for the automotive aftermarket. I hope you enjoy our presentation. That said, let's go. Last year, we had 2 opportunities to talk about COVID-19 and how it was spread in Latin America. It was very interesting because we took 2 different moments with the interval of 45 days or 50 days, and we noticed how the spread was evolving. Today, I'm bringing you information about how is the situation today. Once again, we picked 12 countries that represents around 80 or 82.5% of the total population of the region. And then you can see in this graph, the percentage of confirmed cases as a percentage of total population. You can notice that in average, most of the countries are above the gray line, that means the average in the region. And the worst cases are being Panama and Peru. Peru and Panama, if you compare this to the proportion of this population, this is very dramatic, how many people are confirmed cases of COVID-19 in this region. In average, there is 3% of the total population that is infected by the COVID-19 by the end of 2020. It means 3 out of 100 people is with COVID-19. And the lethality rate, I mean the number of deaths by confirmed case, is a little bit higher, 3.25. And when you look for the figures, you see that Bolivia, Ecuador, Mexico, and Peru are showing the worst figures. Ecuador was in the news due to the pandemic catastrophic situation in Guayaquil in mid-April. But you know, the country didn't recover yet for the minimum level of 3.25. And you see, as Panama has one of the highest rates of confirmed cases, and the other hand is okay in terms of lethality rate as percentage of confirmed case. Mexico is still doing very bad on it, and I don't see any improvement until you have the CoronaVac or the AstraZeneca vaccine or wherever. But when you look for the worries about the people, okay, we are being scared by the COVID-19, but in a recent survey performed by Ipsos, they realized that the people in the countries are more worried about other things, I would say more structural things than the conjunctural, because, you know, COVID-19 is a conjunctural problem that will pass someday, it will end. But on the other hand, we have the structural problems that are affecting the countries in our region. So if you look for this chart, is a little bit confusing, but I'll try to explain it for you. It shows you in terms of what is your main concern about it. This was performed, this survey is called What Worries the World, and it was performed by Ipsos. You see that in Argentina, people are much more worried about unemployed than with COVID-19. In Brazil, the problem is the healthcare. We are seeing people dying, going to the hospitals, or even dying in hospitals. And this is one of the points that most concern about people in Brazil. We had a lot of issues in terms of how the government handled the crisis, and this is reflected in this chart. In Chile, the problem is the poverty and social inequalities. You see that Chile is a country that had a better development index in the region. And nowadays, due to all the riots and all the problems they face, in the last 1.5 years. Poverty and social inequalities is one of their main concerns. When you go for Mexico, crime and violence. So this is not a surprise. We know how the traffic drugs cartels are doing in Mexico and all the situation. So crime and violence are still more a nightmare than COVID-19 for Mexico. And then you go to Peru. The problem is the financial and political corruption. You notice that Peru had a lot of presidents in weeks, some months ago. And then you see that we still have other infrastructural problems to handle. And COVID-19 is another one in the basket of nightmares that our developing countries in the region are looking after. And when you look for all this together, I mean, the COVID-19 plus all the other reasons that people are worried about, like crime, like unemployment, like healthcare, etc., you see impacts in the overall economy. It's important for us to notice this because we are talking about the macroeconomic situation from the top and how it is reflected in the microeconomics from the bottom on the day by day of the small consumption unit, like the companies, the consumers, and all these are affecting the overall economy. Look at this chart. And as in the other charts, the dotted gray line is the average from 2019. And then we can compare the consumer confidence level. You see there are some peaks and valleys on it, but in general, and we don't see a good improvement in the confidence level of Argentinian consumers. They had some peaks in August and September, a little bit above what was the average in 2019, but it's back again in October. This is the latest update of this data. But you see, Argentina is coming from crisis over crisis. It's almost a common sense to say that Argentina is under crisis. But you see that this, in addition to the COVID-19, are impacting the overall economy for Argentina. In Brazil, we can look for a small recovery. And I picked some indicators from each country to show how it differently affects or impacted the overall economy. This is the industrial business confidence level. So in Argentina, we are looking for the consumer level. In Brazil, we are looking for the industrial business confidence level. And you see that from March to April, there is a significant drop of the confidence level, and slowly the industrial business entrepreneurs or the executives from the industrial business are trying to recover their confidence. But you see, there is not as we began on January 2020. It was 65.30, and then in December we went to 63, but we reached 34.5. So this is impacting what will be tomorrow. This is the question. So how tomorrow will be? What will happen tomorrow with this pandemic? When you go to Chile, and this is one thing that caught my attention when I was preparing this presentation, to notice how Chile, that was known by the most advanced economy in our region, the best index of human development, etc., you see that they are not recovering their economy perception. So the situation in Chile is someone that can call our attention to. Unemployment rate in Peru, look at this. So in September, we reached a peak that is 2 times higher than the average of 2019. So this is, let's say, the general economy, the macroeconomics, the economy of the government, of the state, but it has a direct impact in our macroeconomics, in the small consumption unit, in the families and the households and the companies. So unemployment rate at this highest rate has an impact on consumption. It has impact on the day-by-day business in each country. And when you look at this, how is it impacting the sales of new vehicles in the region? So we are situated in the automotive business, and we're in a very specialized segment of the automotive business, which is the automotive aftermarket. And when you look for the sales of new vehicles in the regions, the drop is dramatic. Why I'm saying that this is dramatic? Because this will probably lead to problems in the next 2 or 3 years when these new cars that were not sold will be left in or will be absent in the repair shops. But you look at 16% was the drop in general for Argentina. And when you look for the passenger cars, there is 20.9%. I mean, that is 80% only of it was sold in 2019, was sold in 2020. So this has the highest impact for us in the future for the automotive aftermarket. And this is a consequence, a result of the all problems put together. I mean, you have the COVID, you have the lockdown, you have the social isolation, you have all the other nightmares like the crime, the inequality, the unemployment, the healthcare, etc. that is getting out or making to the consumers to not invest in the big new cars. Look for Chile. The purple, or let's say this is the burgundy bar is 2020 and the gray bar is 2019. The reduction there was 30.6. And the passenger cars were 36.6% of drop. So this is dramatic. Imagine this in terms of people that work for the dealers, people that work for the car makers. This is a very dramatic situation. In Brazil, you see a recovery, but look for April. We sold 2,000 cars in April. This is almost nothing. And then there is a small recovery, but look again. From November to December, there is a drop. And we are talking about 10% less in trucks, 12% less in buses. And in Colombia, almost 70%, or 71,000 units were not sold in 2020. And the highest impact was noticed on the two-wheel segments. The latest data is come from Colombia, is from November, and they had 16.2 less sales in 2020 compared to 2019. And this is one point, an interesting point to mention, that most of the countries in the regions, they rely on the two wheels for the majority of the population mobility. Brazil is one of the biggest producers of motorcycles, and we have a rule in Brazil called the 80-80. I mean, 80% of all the motorcycles produced in Brazil are under 125 and 150 cc, and 80% of these are made in Honda. So imagine this, the impact of this in the situation and on the average of the population. So that's all these figures put together. This is a catastrophic situation when you look for the macroeconomic or the general trend at all. But we are executives and responsible for the automotive aftermarket. We have to have what I call the face of Janus. Janus was the Roman Greek that looked forward and looked backward. So in one hand, we have to look forward and see how this situation will impact the aftermarket in the future. But on the other hand, we have to look backwards and see what's have on it for us in the automotive aftermarket. So this situation with all this red ink graphs, all of this showing going down, can raise us two questions. The first question is, Is the automotive aftermarket a crisis-proof industry? What I'm trying to answer here is, okay, we are in the middle of a crisis with global dimensions, a crisis that we never saw like this in the past. People are comparing this to the Spanish flu or to the Black Plague, because this is spread around all the continents, are impacting people from all range of ages, of wealth, of educational level. Then the question is our industry a crisis-proof segment? And the second point is, are the rules of economy still valid in times like this? You know that we have, from the economic theory, that we have the replacement goods. What it means? It means that in terms of scarcity, consumer will try to look for replacement goods to replace, literally, the goods that are used to buy or to consume. So these are the two questions that are my provocation for you facing all the situation that we are having in our region. And I split this in two trends, the tailwinds and headwinds. Some of you that are acquainted for the aeronautics terminology, what is the tailwind and the headwind? So the tailwind push you up to your destination, and the headwinds pull you against your destination. So this is what I call the two sides of the same pandemic. When I look for the tailwinds, what do you have? This is the replacement goods that I draw from the economic theory. Instead of buy, customers are preferring to keep and repair their goods in terms of uncertainty, in terms of what's going to be tomorrow. The trend of the human behavior or the trend for the consumer behavior is to keep and repair. This is what the economical behavior specialists call the mental accounting. They have this mental accounting for what is the value worth for buy a new car and repair a new car, keep my good and repair. And also, the repair shops, they faced a complicated time during the first 2 or 3 months of pandemic. People that were in the previous encounters that were promoted by Wolk know that in many countries, repair shops were closed, or some of them were working with dating time, etc. Now the repair shops are open and they are busy. So this is the tailwind for the pandemic. People will refrain to use public transportation for a long time because they don't know how all the safety measures are being taken for the other people on the bus, the other people on the metro, the other people on the train, the other people on the airplane. This can lead, and I firmly believe that this will lead to an increase of miles spent per month. And that will lead also to the busy time for the repair shops. But when you look for the headwinds, what is against this movement, this momentum for the automotive aftermarket? The regulation from country to country led to these different levels of reopening the markets. And we still have, in cities like São Paulo, where I am, the government decided that between the Christmas Eve and the New Year's Day, that we have a lockdown to avoid people to get together and spread more the COVID-19. So this is something that is going back and forth. People in Europe are facing this nowadays. Italy is with lockdown again. So we don't know how this will be for the next days. So this is one of the headwinds of our market. And also, the importer countries, and the majority of the countries in our region are importers, with the exception of Brazil, Argentina, some things in Colombia, but in majority, the countries in our region are importers. They are already being affected by the currency depreciation, and this is impacted, and price increase from the suppliers. So this will lead for an inflation in automotive aftermarket, which can let the consumer more inclined to do the repair, or even worse, to make the minimum. And this is happening all the time during the 80s in Brazil. During the 80s in Brazil, we had a highest inflation rate that any decent country can have in the world. So people went to the repair shop, asked for a quote to make the service, and then asked the mechanic and say, what is the minimum that I can do to keep my car working or keep my car running? So this is something that can happen due to this currency depreciation and price increase. And this for me is the worst point for the headwinds: lack of products on the shelves. Repair shops are already claiming about the lack of products. Auto parts store, auto parts resellers, the retailers, they are facing difficulties to find products. And this has a root cause. And the root cause for this, especially in Brazil and Argentina, is related to the lack of selling of new cars, of new vehicles. The tier one suppliers, the OEM suppliers, they cut their production, they fired people, and they are having problems to hire people again. There is a lot of opportunities of work for skilled people, and they are not finding these people. And then the production was reduced, and aftermarket for most of the tier one producers, and I can say this because I worked for tier one pro suppliers for most of the time in my life, and we have aftermarket as a secondary. The primary for the production in terms of batches, in terms of scale economy, are the OE, the supplier for the car makers. And when the car makers are not producing, there is a time to change the tooling, there is a time to change for raw material. Raw material is also scarce in many of the countries. We are facing scarcity of plastics and polymers in many regions. We are facing scarcity of the oil, the raw material for producing lubricant oils. So all of this put together is one of the biggest headwinds for the recovery of the automotive aftermarket. On the other hand, this generates an avenue of opportunity for newcomers. And who has the gut, who has the instinct, who has the courage to enter into these markets, you have some opportunities. One curiosity: Venezuela is a country that is facing a lot of economic problems for the last 10 or 15 years. But there is opportunity there, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are finding opportunities to sell parts into Venezuela. So this is all kind of histories like this have two sides, like a flipped coin. You can cry or you can sell wipers. This is the situation. Let's look inside the repair shop. And why do I insist in to look for the repair shop? Because it's on the repair shop that the demand of our products starts. When you sell your product for our warehouse distributors, and then the warehouse distributors sell these products to a part reseller, we didn't finish the sale yet. The life cycle or the sales cycle of a product ends when the technician, the mechanic from a repair shop, throw away the box. So it's very important for us to look into the repair shop, inside the repair shop, and try to figure out what's going on. What are the trends and what were the needs from the repair shop? So I will share with you a longitudinal survey made with Brazilian repair shops. This survey was performed last year, 2020, in 6 waves of data collection: June, July, September, October, November, and December. And most of the times, with the exception of June, the data collection was made in the beginning of the month. So theoretically, the data were already fresh in the head or the mind of the owner of the repair shop. So it's easy to try to figure out what's going on. This survey was made with a weighted sample. I mean, it was a similar repair shop profile at each wave. So it means that no same repair shop was interviewed every time, but the weighted sample, I mean, the similar profile, the data was collected online to a platform to collect the data. And the focus of this survey was in the daily activity and the customer interaction. Remember, we mentioned that the macroeconomics and the microeconomic situation impacted the day-by-day business and impacted the consumers at all. So it's important to see how internally the repair shops were operated and how they were interacting with the customer. And the survey was performed by Sinal, the Automotive Intelligence Central, and Fraga Automotive Intelligence. The 2 companies performed this survey and were very kind to provide us the data to share with you. Look at this chart. The question is the car owner bringing the part? I have to make a parenthesis here. All the repair shops are very reluctant to have the repair shop to bring the part. Point number 1, repair shops, they make profit. They makes profit on the part. So they buy a part from, let's say, 100, then sell this part by 120, 125, 130. So they make profit on it. Second, they are scared about counterfeit products. So they don't rely on the customer or the car owner to go to a parts store and buy the parts. They are scared, they are suspicious that the car owner can be cheated by the clerkman on the parts seller and have maybe a Chinese part or a counterfeited part. But in general, based on historic data and on all the time series data that we are handling for the last 12 years, in general, only 3% of the repair shops allows the car owner to bring the part. And most of them are the smallest repair shops, the ones that don't have cash flow to buy products. And when you look for the parts resellers, they are selling parts in installments. So the car owner can pay with the credit card in 6 installments, 10 installments, wherever. So this could be some opportunity for both the car owner and the small repair shop. But look for this chart. We are looking at this trend changed 10 times. Almost 35%, or let's say 1 in each 3 parts were bringed by the car owner. And you know why? This is the second question. When you ask it, okay, is the car owner bringing the part? When they say yes, the next question is why? Why the car owner is bringing the part? And look that for the third wave onwards, start to appear not finding the part. The main reason is still cash flow shortage for the first and second wave, I mean June and July. Repair shops are still preparing, are still organizing, are still putting together the situation. They had cash flow shortage. You see, we're talking about small business, 4 to 6 employees, family business, no management skills. So on the hands of these people is where the majority of the business of our industry is on. Also, fear of bad debt. Also, the risk to the customer don't pay. But look for, from August onwards, how this not finding the part appear in the survey, and it's growing. I mean, this is real. And this is happening. We have this data from Brazil, but this is happening in Argentina. Argentina is even worse with all the restriction for imported parts. This is happening in Colombia, this is happening in Peru, this is happening in Chile. Lack of raw material from the producer sides, currency depreciation, price increase, all of these are leading to not finding the part. So this will lead for an inflation in our industry. Look at, when you look for the 60 wave in December, 36% of the reason why the car owner was bringing the part is because the repair shop was not able to find the part. And when I mean find the part, I mean look for parts resellers, look for car dealers, and look for the warehouse distributors. There is a scarcity of parts. How is your average ticket? How is your average ticket comparing the parts and service? This was surveyed on the 50 and 60 wave only. So this is a new question that were included in the survey. If you look for November, we are seeing some higher than usual. What means that people were going more to the repair shops. And they came December with a lot of bad news about the second wave of the COVID-19, more death, etc. And if you look for the data on the Brazilian spread of COVID-19, you see that the second wave starts in the mid-October and then is going for the second wave, going closer to the first wave. So people are reluctant again. And then you see that there is a difference between the 50 and the 60 wave from 18% that lower than usual to 31% lower. And then 42 the same as usual. But in average, you can see that the repair shop are trying to find their balance between service, parts, average ticket, etc. But the population is still scared. So some final remarks of this snapshot of COVID-19 in Latin America. One of the questions that we were supposed to answer during this presentation is this crisis a new 2008 like the global downturn? And my point of view is not. This is completely different from the global downturn. Why I'm saying this? When you look for the global downturn 2008, it started with the Lehman Brothers Bank in October 2008 in United States, and then it was going from country to country. The Brazilian government was capable at that time to put some anti-crisis measurement that helped the economy for a while. And global downturn affected countries in a very different way. When you look for the average person, the average Brazilian, he didn't realize what the global downturn was in general. So I can't say this is similar. This is different. This is different because it's affecting all the countries in the world in almost similar ways. The situation of the countries being a developed country or a developing country is not helping. You see the UK, you see Italy, you see Sweden. So for me, this is very different. So this is not the same one. And I'm not very optimistic as I used to be. People that knows me know that I'm very optimistic all the time. But I see that we have, as a good friend of mine used to say, you have a desert to cross yet in 2021, maybe the first half or the Q3 in 2021, we'll be able to see more clear. But the situation nowadays is still of respect and to pay attention of the next steps. And there is a philosopher, mathematician, wherever, called Nassim Taleb, and he used the term the black swan, something that is possible but is unexpected. And COVID-19 is a real black swan. So this is possible but unexpected. Nobody imagined that we could face a pandemic like this. As I mentioned before, this is being compared to the Spanish flu or the Black Plague, two of the more devastation that the humankind had in this history. Another point that caught my attention when I analyzed the year 2020 from March onwards is that the winning strategy that were implemented in the last 15 years, like the just-in-time delivery, best cost country sourcing, etc., they are not satisfactory anymore due to the magnitude of the current crisis. We see a lot of factories without parts because the suppliers in China were closed due to pandemics. And with the just-in-time deliveries, they had no maneuver space to handle this. And then we see notice from Japan that they are bringing back the plants for the island, getting out from China. So it's time for, when you look for a strategy, and a strategy is always a long-term definition, is to see how to combine our backyard production and our best cost country sourcing, whatever. Not to mention, we don't have parts on the shelves at the parts resellers. Social isolation, lockdown, and the uncertainties about the future will lead to the habits I mentioned before. People going back to the repair shop, to do the minimum. So this will have a decrease on the average ticket, but this will be compensated by the volume. So there will be an offset between the average ticket that will be reduced plus the amount of cars that will visit the repair shops. Used cars. The sales of used cars are booming when compared to the new cars sales. People that work with used cars are looking for cars to buy. There is a situation, people are thinking twice instead of buying a new car and make an upgrade from a 2017 car to a 2019 car instead of buy a brand new one, 2021. Because this is the difference between a 2017 and 2019 is less mileage, the car with more features. So this is something is happening around the region. And the customer confidence. This will take a long path to be higher again. And we are the aftermarket players. We have to take advantage of this situation and put it all together. People are reluctant to make investments. The aftermarket is a bulletproof industry, but we have to be ready to serve this market. This will be the future for us. Forget about the mobility issues from now. What the people want is to avoid use public transportation, keep the car working by the minimum, and this will lead to business into the automotive aftermarket. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you appreciated this overview about Latin America and how we see the situation for 2021. I'm sorry to be not so optimistic, but we have a light in the end of the tunnel. We have to, as automotive aftermarket executives, be ready to take advantage of all these tailwinds that are pushing our business ahead, and be aware about the headwinds. And some of the headwinds is what we call the macro level variables. We cannot handle this, but we can know and maybe anticipate our movements up to this. Thank you very much. Have a good day. And here are my contact date if you want to know more about what we do and what Latin America. Thank you very much again.